In the brutal Dakota winter of 1878, abandoned homesteads became graves for the unprepared. Eliza Freeman, a young black widow left to die by prejudiced settlers after her husband's suspicious murder, faces starvation as supplies dwindle and temperatures plummet. When wealthy cattleman Augustus Montgomery breaks down her door during a blizzard, offering marriage in exchange for survival, Eliza must decide if trading one form of captivity for another is worth uncovering the truth about who really wanted her dead. With frost-hardened resolve, she vows to become more dangerous than the winter that failed to kill her. A snow-covered cabin in flames at night. A woman's silhouette against the firelight, holding a bloodied rifle, standing over two dead men. One, dressed as a wealthy rancher, one in settler's clothes. Behind her, a third man lies wounded, watching in horror as she turns toward him, her face illuminated to reveal tears streaming down dark cheeks. "You all thought nature would kill me," she says softly. "But I learned from the winter." The wagon, wheels sank into Dakota mud. Spring's false promise had lured many settlers west only to trap them in autumn's early freeze. Thomas Freeman wiped his brow despite the chill. His wife Eliza sat straight-backed beside him, her dark hands clasped tightly in her lap. "It's not Chicago," Thomas said. Eliza studied the scattered buildings of the settlement, wood and hope assembled against the vast prairie. "No," she agreed, "it's not." The settlement's lone street emptied as they passed. Faces appeared in windows, then withdrew. A child pointed until his mother pulled him inside. Hargrove's General store dominated the far end. A tall man with a silver beard emerged, rifle propped casually against his shoulder. 5 others formed a half-circle behind him. "You're lost," the man said. Not a question. Thomas jumped down. "Thomas Freeman. This is my wife Eliza. We purchased the Whitman claim." Whispers rippled through the gathered men. The silver-bearded man's smile never reached his eyes. "Jacob Hargrove. Whitman's plot's 10 miles north. Nothing there but dirt and broken dreams." Eliza felt the weight of their stares like stones. She'd felt it before in Chicago, but there, Thomas's newspaper connections offered shelter. Here they were alone. The Whitman cabin sagged at its corners like a weary creature. Thomas talked of building a proper house come spring. Eliza nodded and cleaned what remained of the previous occupants' lives. A child's wooden horse, a woman's hairbrush with strands still clinging, a Bible with pressed wildflowers. The pages told their own story. Drought, illness, retreat. "They didn't die here," she whispered to herself. Small comfort. Frost came 2 weeks later. Thomas wrote by candlelight, chronicling their days for his Chicago newspaper. His recent articles about questionable land claims and mistreatment of indigenous families had drawn attention. Not all welcome. "Hargrove controls more than the store," Thomas told her one night. "Land deals, water rights. Even the sheriff wears his brand." "Is it wise to challenge him here?" Eliza asked. Thomas smiled. "Truth is always wise, my love, even when dangerous." The first heavy snow fell a week later. Thomas went hunting. Eliza waited at the window until nightfall. He'd never fired a rifle before coming west. They found him the next morning. Jacob Hargrove himself brought the news. "Hunting accident," he said, standing in their doorway, hat in hand. Snow gathered on his shoulders like judgment. Terrible shame. 6 men carried Thomas's body. They buried him quickly in the frozen ground. The Reverend spoke brief words over the shallow grave. No one met Eliza's eyes except young Hargrove. Jacob's son watched her with something between fear and fascination. "We'll help you return east come spring," Jacob Hargrove promised afterward. "Too dangerous now with the passes closing." That night, Eliza found Thomas's journal hidden beneath a floorboard. The last entry contained a single line. Hargrove falsified land claims. Proof in county records. The settlers stopped visiting after the funeral. Weeks passed. The snow deepened. Wind screamed through cabin gaps that Thomas had promised to fix. Eliza counted her supplies. too few. She rationed the flour, the salt pork, the precious coffee beans. One morning she found boot prints circling the cabin. The next day her horse was gone. Just wandered off in the storm, young Hargrove said when she struggled through snow to town. Happens this time of year. He sold her supplies at triple summer prices. She noticed the wagon wheels had been tampered with, the spokes cut halfway, through. My father says you should stay put, young Hargrove advised, for safety. The blizzard hit 3 days later. Wind shoved snow through every crack. Eliza stuffed cloth into gaps, burned furniture when wood ran low. Frost crept across interior walls. Her breath hung visible before her face. Food dwindled. Eliza began hallucinating conversations with Thomas. His voice seemed clearest during whiteout conditions, when the world beyond her four walls ceased to exist. They mean for you to die here, Thomas whispered from the shadows. I know, she answered. She burned his newspaper clippings for warmth, memorizing each word before they turned to ash. The articles outlined how Hargrove had driven off 3 previous landowners who challenged his claims. One family, Lakota with legal deeds, had disappeared entirely. Week 6, without visitors. Eliza could count her remaining meals on one hand. She melted snow for water. Her fingers had lost feeling days ago. You must get to the county seat, Thomas's voice urged. The records. Spring, she whispered back. If she survived. The noise woke her from half-sleep. Wood splintering. Men's voices. They'd finally come to check if Winter had finished their work. Eliza grabbed the fire poker, her only weapon. The door burst open. Snow swirled around a massive figure silhouetted against painful brightness. Not Hargrove. A stranger. Eliza swung, the poker with remaining strength. The man caught her wrist easily. Steady now, a deep voice commanded. She collapsed against him, darkness rushing in. His arms seemed impossibly warm as he lifted her. Montgomery's going to have questions about this one, another voice said. Consciousness slipped away. Her last thought was of Thomas's journal, still hidden beneath the floorboards. Eliza woke to softness, actual warmth, a real bed with sheets that smelled of lavender. For one terrifying moment she believed she had died. A woman's face appeared above her, lined but kind, gray hair pulled tight beneath a white cap. There you are, the woman said, pressing a cool cloth to Eliza's forehead. The master will want to know you've woken. Master? Eliza croaked. Mr. Montgomery. The woman's eyes crinkled with what might have been amusement. He doesn't usually bring in strays. Augustus Montgomery came to her on the 3rd day of consciousness. Not a visit, an assessment. He filled the doorway like the mountains filled the horizon. Inevitable, permanent. His eyes moved over her with cold calculation. You're looking better, he said. Mrs. Freeman, isn't it? Eliza's fingers tightened on the bedsheet. No one here should know her name. He crossed to the window. Sunlight caught in his beard. Dark shot through with silver like iron filings on coal. A cattleman's weathered face with a banker's sharp gaze. I knew your husband. Met in Chicago last spring. Intelligent man. Principled. She sat straighter, despite her weakness. Then you know how he died. Montgomery turned. I know what they claim. Hunting accident. Murder, Eliza said. The word hung between them. Likely. He nodded. Hargrove doesn't tolerate threats. I found your cabin while surveying new grazing lands. Looked abandoned until we saw smoke. He moved closer. His shadow fell across her bed. I have a proposition, Mrs. Freeman. Montgomery's proposition was simple in its brutality. Marriage, protection for her, respectability for him. Eastern investors were coming. Railroad money, cattle contracts. They preferred family men, stable men. A bachelor nearing 40 raised questions. A business arrangement, he clarified. Nothing more required. Eliza studied him. His hands bore calluses beneath fine clothes, new money, self-made. And if I decline? His eyes met hers directly. Spring coach leaves in 6 weeks. I'll provide funds for your return east. Truth wrapped in courtesy. 6 more weeks of winter. 6 weeks as a charity case in a stranger's home, or the wife of the territory's most powerful man. I have conditions, she said. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Name them. Education for local children. All children, including indigenous. Now genuine surprise. Unusual priority. Thomas's priority, she corrected. And mine. He considered her with new interest. What else? Autonomy within the household. I won't be a decorative object. Never thought you would be. A ghost of a smile. Anything else? Eliza swallowed. Protection from the Hargroves. Montgomery's smile vanished. That was implied from the beginning. The wedding happened 10 days later. A judge, not a preacher. Montgomery's ranch house overflowed with territory notables eager to witness the inexplicable marriage. Men who controlled railroads. Men who moved cattle. Men who decided which towns lived and which withered. The bride wore blue. Not black. Not white. The color of distance. The color of sky above prairie. The groom wore satisfaction like a well-tailored coat. They signed papers before and after the ceremony, property agreements, financial provisions, lines of succession, all favoring Eliza should misfortune befall her new husband. Montgomery's lawyer looked pained at each signature. Insurance, Montgomery explained later, against accusations. Eliza understood. Any accident, any illness would raise questions. She was the destitute widow he rescued. Now wealthy beyond imagining should he die. Suspicion would follow her like a shadow. Montgomery slept elsewhere that night, and all nights after. The house had belonged to someone else before Montgomery, someone with traditional tastes and excessive funds. Heavy velvet draperies, dark wooden furniture that swallowed light, every surface burdened with ornaments collecting dust. Eliza began in her own rooms, drapes removed, windows cleaned, sunlight allowed entry. She moved outward day by day, reclaiming spaces, introducing simplicity. The staff watched warily at first, then with growing approval. Mrs. Chen, the cook, was first to thaw. She found Eliza in the kitchen before dawn making her own tea. Not proper, Mrs. Chen scolded. Then, seeing Eliza's expression, I'll teach you real tea, not this English nonsense. The housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, surrendered next. She discovered Eliza mending linens, fine, neat stitches that matched her own exacting standards. My mother believed idle hands invited devils, Eliza explained. Mrs. Abernathy almost smiled. Mine believed the same. Montgomery watched her changes with quiet amusement. He spent days writing boundaries, meeting with ranch managers, negotiating contracts, sometimes returning mud-spattered and bone-weary, other times immaculate from town meetings bringing small gifts, books, seed catalogs. Once, sheet music, though no piano existed in the house. For when we get one, he said simply. She learned his contradictions through observation. The ruthless businessman who refused to evict a widow from prime grazing land. The hard employer who secretly paid for a former ranch hand's surgery in Denver. The territorial power who defended a Mexican worker against accusations of theft. Not charity, he corrected when she mentioned it. Justice. Spring arrived in fragments. Snow retreated to shadowed places. Mud replaced ice. Green whispers appeared on south-facing slopes. Eliza planted a kitchen garden with Mrs. Chen's guidance. Montgomery watched from his study window, something unreadable in his expression. The dinner party was Montgomery's idea. Eastern Railroad. Investors were coming. Territorial politicians. Wealthy ranchers. And the Hargroves, father and son, newly employed managing Montgomery's southern pastures. You hired them, Eliza said. Not a question. Keep enemies closer, Montgomery replied. They know the southern ranges best. Eliza wore green, the color of new growth, the color of life after winter. Her hair arranged simply, her mother's jet, earrings her only adornment. The guests arrived in waves of expensive wool and forced laughter. Jacob Hargrove entered last, gray beard now fully white. He froze mid-stride when he saw her. Young Hargrove bumped into his father's back, face draining of color when he followed his father's gaze. Eliza smiled, lifted her glass slightly, watched terror bloom in their eyes. The dinner proceeded with excruciating civility. Railroad men spoke of progress. Politicians promised prosperity. Hargrove contributed nothing, eyes fixed on his plate as if salvation might be found between potatoes and beef. Montgomery's hand found hers beneath the table, a brief pressure, solidarity or warning, she couldn't tell. Later, after guests departed, Eliza heard voices from Montgomery's study, raised in anger, then hushed again. She moved closer to the not quite closed door. You said she died in the winter, Hargrove's voice trembled. I said no such thing, Montgomery replied evenly. You assumed. This complicates matters. Hargrove again. No. Montgomery's voice hardened to steel. It simplifies them. She's under my protection now, my name, my authority. If anything happens, to my wife, they'll never find your bodies. Silence followed. Heavy, dangerous silence. We understand each other perfectly, Hargrove finally said. Eliza slipped away before the door opened. She sat in her bedroom window, watching the Hargroves' carriage disappear down the long drive, their lantern a fading spark against absolute darkness. For the first time since Thomas died, she felt something like power return to her veins. Cattle disappeared first. 40 head from the south pasture, tracks leading nowhere. Montgomery rode, out himself, returned dusty and grim-faced. The ranch hands avoided his gaze at dinner. 2 days later, a lumber contract was mysteriously canceled. Then a mortgage note called in early on property Montgomery had recently acquired. Small cuts, precisely placed. The work of men who understood business as warfare. Eliza found Montgomery in his study past midnight, lamp burning low. Papers spread across his desk like battle plans. He didn't look up when she entered. The Hargroves, she said. He nodded once, proving their worth. To whom? His eyes met hers. Good question. Spring rains made mud of the roads. The ranch became an island in a sea of impassable terrain. Montgomery paced like a caged predator. Eliza watched him from windows, from doorways, cataloging his restlessness, his increasing vigilance. She found him one evening staring at rainfall. You could dismiss them, she suggested. And lose sight of them? He shook his head. Better the snake you can see. The ledgers revealed the pattern. Eliza had discovered Montgomery's account books while reorganizing the library. Her father had taught her figures alongside scripture. Numbers spoke truth when men lied. Montgomery found her surrounded by open books, his eyebrow raised in question. The Hargroves target your newest acquisitions, she said. Properties purchased in the last 6 months. Nothing older. Interest kindled in his eyes. Show me. They worked through the night, Eliza plotting losses on a map, Montgomery supplying property dates. By dawn, a pattern emerged. A perfect circle of sabotage around a seemingly worthless tract near the county line. What's there? She asked. Montgomery's smile was winter cold. According to surveys, nothing. According to Thomas's last article, everything. The article was among Montgomery's papers, unfinished, unpublished. Thomas's final work, an exposé on water rights manipulation. The creek feeding the entire valley originated on that worthless tract. Control the headwaters. Control the territory. Thomas discovered this? Eliza's fingers trembled on the pages her husband had touched. He came to me with suspicions. Montgomery's voice held something like regret. I was investigating when he died. The revelation changed something between them. Mutual purpose replaced cautious alliance. They rode together now, Montgomery teaching, her to handle rains with authority, to read weather in cloud formations, to track subtle signs of sabotage. Ranch hands who had eyed her with skepticism now touched hat brims in genuine respect. She had survived Winter's attempt to claim her. Now she helped defend what was theirs. The fire started just after midnight, the barn first, flames catching on dry hay, then the nearest outbuilding, wind carrying embers toward the main house. Eliza woke to smoke and shouting. Montgomery was already gone from the adjoining room he'd recently begun occupying. She dressed quickly, grabbed the pistol he'd insisted she keep, and headed downstairs. The ranch yard had become hell. Fire painted everything in violent orange. Men rushed with water buckets in desperate lines. Animals screamed from burning stables. No sign of Montgomery. Eliza circled toward the barn, handkerchief pressed to her mouth. A shadow moved against flames, a man slipping away from buildings, not toward them. Young Hargrove. She followed, pistol steady in her hand. He moved toward the creek that bordered the property. Another figure waited there, older Hargrove. They spoke in urgent whispers, backs to her. Montgomery wasn't in his room, young Hargrove said. The woman neither. Check the study, his father ordered. The evidence must burn too. A twig snapped beneath Eliza's foot. Both men turned. Young Hargrove's hand moved to his waistband. The gunshot cracked against night sky. Not Eliza's weapon. A different angle. Young Hargrove clutched his shoulder, blood seeping between fingers. His father ran toward darkness. Montgomery materialized beside her, rifle smoking. His face transformed by combat. Not the businessman now, but something older, more dangerous. Are you hurt? His hands checked her for injuries, impersonal as a doctor. She shook her head. Good. He gripped young Hargrove by his uninjured arm. Then let's find out who paid them. Dawn broke over smoldering ruins. The barn gone, 2 outbuildings destroyed. The main house saved by shifting wind and desperate effort. Young Hargrove locked in the root cellar, his wound bandaged but his future uncertain. Montgomery hadn't slept. He stood watching sunrise with a soldier's vigilance. When Eliza approached, he spoke without turning. This won't end until they're finished. Or we are. Who taught you to shoot like that? She asked. The question surprised him. He studied her face, weighing truth against habit. War, he finally said. I hunted men for the Union. She nodded once. That explains much. She found the letters that afternoon. Montgomery had ridden to town, checking telegraph lines the Hargroves might have compromised. The study safe was unlocked. Unusual carelessness from a careful man. Inside, correspondence between Montgomery and Thomas, dating back months before their arrival in the territory. Plans, strategy, references to evidence gathered, and one letter addressed to Thomas the week before his death. Suspect Hargrove knows we're closing in. Take precautions. Monsieur Eliza's hands went cold. Montgomery had known Thomas, known him well, worked with him, and known the danger. She was still, sitting there when Montgomery returned. Her face must have revealed everything. He paused in the doorway, then closed it behind him. You knew, she said, before you found me. You knew who I was. Yes. No hesitation, no apology. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have trusted me? Montgomery crossed to his desk. A stranger claiming friendship with your dead husband? You let me believe you found me by chance. I searched for weeks. His voice hardened. The Hargroves told everyone you'd gone east. I nearly believed them. What was Thomas to you? The question that mattered most. Montgomery sank into his chair. For the first time, she saw genuine weariness in him. A colleague. I tracked war criminals after the rebellion ended. men who profited from Reconstruction. The Hargroves fled south with blood money, then west with land schemes. Thomas helped me find them. You used him as bait, she whispered. He volunteered. Montgomery met her eyes. I warned him about the risk. Thunder rolled in the distance, spring storms gathering again. The air between them charged with unspoken accusations. I was coming to warn him, Montgomery continued. Arrived too late, found his grave instead. Then searched for me. Understanding dawned, not from kindness, for evidence. His silence confirmed it. Our marriage. She forced strength into her voice. Another strategy? Something flashed across his face. Pain, perhaps. Or merely calculation. Initially, he admitted, protection, for you. Access to Hargrove for me. And now, the question lingered between them. Before he could answer, hoofbeats pounded in the yard. Mrs. Abernathy appeared at the study door, face drawn with concern. Sheriff's here, she announced. With papers. Montgomery rose. We'll finish this later. Yes, Eliza agreed coldly. We will. The creek was rising. Spring runoff from mountains still winter-capped. Fields turned to shallow lakes. Roads disappeared beneath muddy water. The world dissolving its boundaries. The sheriff was tall, thin, with eyes too close together. His badge new, his authority borrowed. He handed papers to Montgomery with unconcealed satisfaction. Arrest warrant, he announced. Murder of Thomas Freeman. Montgomery showed nothing on his face. Interesting timing. Witness came forward. The sheriff nodded toward the window where Jacob Hargrove waited on horseback. Says he saw you arguing with Freeman day he died. Says Freeman threatened to expose your water rights scheme. Montgomery didn't move. And you believe him? Jury will. The sheriff produced handcuffs. Town's waiting. Montgomery turned to Eliza. His eyes held volumes. Warning, apology, instruction. Check the false bottom in my desk, he said quietly. Trust no one until you know the whole truth. The sheriff led him out into rising water. Their horses splashed through growing puddles. Eliza watched from the porch, face impassive. A carriage appeared on the horizon. Eastern investors arriving exactly on schedule. The perfect storm of crisis. Montgomery arrested. Evidence missing. Money at stake. And Eliza alone at the center, with enemies on all sides. The false bottom of Montgomery's desk contained a war. Not metaphorically, actual battle plans. Maps of territorial holdings like military objectives. Deeds with bloodstains at their edges. Photographs of 3 families. All dead now, according to the neat handwriting beneath each image. Evidence methodically gathered. Lives catalogued, then lost. The largest folder held Hargrove's past. Confederate officers who had massacred surrendering black Union soldiers. War criminals who fled south, then west, shedding identities like snakeskin. The Hargroves, father and 2 sons, had found prosperity in corruption. Land grabs, water rights manipulation, selective enforcement of territorial law. Thomas had documented it all. His notes meticulously detailed their methods, how they identified vulnerable landowners, how accidents befell those who resisted sale, how county records conveniently burned after questionable transfers. Montgomery had been hunting them for years. Eliza sat back, understanding washing over her like spring floodwater. Not just business rivals, not simple land dispute. Blood feud, wrapped in commerce. Justice pursued with cold precision. The Eastern investor cleared his throat from the study doorway. Mr. Phillips. Boston money and Eastern manners. He'd been waiting an hour while she searched. Mrs. Montgomery, shall we discuss business despite your husband's unfortunate absence? She gestured to a chair. We shall. Phillips was younger than she expected. Barely 30. Harvard educated, with family connections throughout railways. His eyes kept returning to the color of her skin, then darting away. I understood Mr. Montgomery would present the railroad spur proposal himself. Circumstances intervened. She opened the folder Montgomery had prepared. The terms remain unchanged. Phillips leaned forward. With respect, madam, these investments require certain assurances of stability. My husband's legal troubles are temporary. Perhaps, he tapped the folder, but capital avoids uncertainty. She heard the opportunity in his words, the leverage being applied, the assumption of her desperation. Mr. Phillips, she closed the folder. The water rights alone guarantee returns exceeding 20% annually. Do you know another investment offering such security? His eyebrows rose slightly. You understand the figures? I prepared them. Not entirely true, but close enough. Now shall we continue, or would you prefer to negotiate with the Hargroves instead? His smile turned genuine. I see Montgomery chose his partner wisely. The town jail occupied the back room of the sheriff's office. 2 cells, iron bars, the smell of despair soaked into wooden floors. Montgomery sat on a narrow cot, still wearing yesterday's mud-stained clothes. They allowed her 10 minutes. The sheriff watched from the doorway, fingering his gun belt nervously. Phillips signed, she told Montgomery. Full amount. Relief flashed across his face. Well done. The evidence in your desk. She lowered her voice. It explains much. Not everything. No time now. Montgomery glanced toward the sheriff. Young Hargrove released himself during the confusion, disappeared. Both Hargroves will come for the evidence next. His voice barely carried to her. They can't afford a trial. Too many secrets. They've offered me a deal, she whispered. Testify against you. Split your holdings with them after. His face betrayed nothing. Smart move. I'm considering it. Now surprise flickered in his eyes. She held his gaze steadily. Appear to accept, he finally said. Buy time. The storm broke as she rode back to the ranch. Torrential rain turned roads to rivers. Her horse struggled through knee-deep water. Lightning scarred the sky with momentary daylight. In those flashes, she saw the valley transforming, creek banks overflowing, fields disappearing beneath brown water, the world drowning in its own rebirth. Night had fallen by the time she reached the ranch. No lamps lit windows, no movement in the yard. The house stood dark against darker sky. Instinct slowed her approach. She dismounted at the tree line, led her horse to the stable's back entrance. Mrs. Abernathy lay inside, bound and gagged but alive. Her eyes widened at Eliza's appearance. Eliza freed her quickly. Hargroves, the housekeeper whispered. Both of them. Said they'd wait for your return. The others? Cellar, locked in. Go to the line cabin, Eliza instructed. Bring help, if you can. Mrs. Abernathy clutched her arm. They'll kill you. Perhaps. Eliza checked Montgomery's revolver. But Winter already tried. She entered through the kitchen. Darkness provided cover. Raindrops on windows masked her footsteps. She knew this house now. Every creaking board, every shadowed corner. Voices came from Montgomery's study, Jacob Hargrove's resonant command, his son's higher response, the crack of wood being splintered, the desk being dismantled. Eliza moved silently down the hallway. The evidence was no longer in the desk. She'd moved it after Phillips left, hidden it where only Montgomery would think to look. Young Hargrove emerged from the study, lamp in hand, his wounded shoulder heavily bandaged. He turned toward the stairs leading to bedrooms, toward Eliza. His eyes widened in recognition. His free hand moved to his gun. Lightning flashed. Thunder cracked directly overhead. The lamp in his hand flickered, caught his sleeve. Fire bloomed up his arm. He screamed, dropping both lamp and weapon. Flames spread to the carpet, the curtains, the wooden wainscoting. Jacob Hargrove burst from the study, assessed the situation in one glance, grabbed his burning son and dragged him toward the door. The woman, young Hargrove gasped. Upstairs. Jacob nodded once. I'll find her. Get outside. The fire moved, faster than Eliza anticipated, hungry after days of rain. Fed by furniture, fabrics, years of waxed floors, smoke filled the upper hallway within minutes. She retreated to Montgomery's bedroom. The window overlooked the porch roof. Possible escape route. She checked the revolver again. 5 bullets. 1 chance. The bedroom door flew open. Jacob Hargrove stood silhouetted against growing flames, his own gun raised. "Where's the evidence?" he demanded. Eliza kept the revolver, steady. "Gone. Sent to the territorial governor this morning." "Liar." He stepped forward. "Tell me, and I'll make it quick. Like Thomas?" Her voice remained calm. Quick enough he never saw it coming? Fury twisted his features. "Your husband was a fool, digging into business that wasn't his. Montgomery's business. Revenge." Hargrove spat the word. "For a war. Long finished. Ancient grievances. Justice," she corrected. "For murdered families. Stolen lands. Lives destroyed. Justice." He laughed bitterly. "From a union butcher who hunted men for sport? Ask Montgomery how many he killed after the war ended. How many surrendering men?" Smoke thickened between them. The floor grew hot beneath her feet, the house groaning as fire consumed its supports. "We're both dead if we stay," she said. "You first." He raised his gun. She fired. The bullet caught him in the shoulder. Not lethal. Enough to spin him sideways. His own shot went wild. Eliza kicked open the window. Cold rain struck her face. The porch roof beckoned, slick with water. She glanced back once at Hargrove, struggling to stand. "Winter should have killed you," he snarled. "Winter taught me," she replied, and jumped. Town was chaos when she arrived. The dam upriver had broken. Water surged through streets. Buildings became islands in a muddy sea. People gathered on the church steps, highest ground available. The jail stood partially submerged, front door hanging open, cells empty. Eliza found Montgomery organizing evacuation efforts, directing wagons to higher ground, calm amid panic. His eyes widened at the sight of her sodden, smoke-stained appearance. "The ranch," he said, "burning." She handed him the documents from his hidden safe. "Hargrove's too, I think." "You're certain?" "No." Truth mattered now. "I left them in the fire. Their choices were their own." Understanding passed between them. Montgomery nodded once, accepting her judgment. They worked through the night, rescuing stranded families, salvaging what could be saved. When dawn broke, half the town stood underwater. The other half crowded onto surrounding hillsides. The sheriff found them distributing blankets, his earlier arrogance replaced by exhaustion. "Hargrove's bodies," he reported. "Found in what's left of your ranch house, evidence too, I reckon." "A tragedy," Montgomery said evenly. "Convenient." The sheriff studied them both. "Witnesses against you. Gone." "Witnesses against themselves," Eliza corrected. "The territorial governor received copies of everything yesterday. By courier." The sheriff's face paled. "Everything?" "Every deed. Every murder. Every official who profited." Montgomery's voice carried quiet authority. "Including your monthly payments." The sheriff backed away, turned, ran toward his horse. "He won't get far," Montgomery said. "No," Eliza agreed. "The roads are gone." 3 weeks later, they stood amid the ranch house ruins, blackened timbers reaching skyward like accusing fingers. Around them, spring grass had already begun reclaiming scorched earth, life pushing through death's remnants. Montgomery surveyed the destruction. "We can rebuild. Different this time." "We?" Eliza studied his profile. The question she'd asked, before the arrest, still hung between them. "If you wish it." He turned to face her fully. "I'd understand if you preferred independence, a settlement, your own path." She considered the offer. Freedom, wealth, No obligations to this complicated man with his violent past and unexpected honor. The school, she said instead. For all children. You promised. Already approved by the Territorial Council. Hint of smile touched his mouth. Construction begins next month. Eliza looked beyond the ruins to greening fields, to mountains still crowned with winter white, to sky promising endless possibilities. Not independence, she decided. Partnership, equal standing, shared authority. In business matters, he agreed readily. In all matters. Her gaze held his. No more secrets between us. Montgomery considered this. The soldier calculating risks, the businessman weighing assets against liabilities. Agreed, he finally said, extending his hand. She took it, not the handshake he expected, but interlaced fingers. Commitment without surrender. Strength, meeting strength. In the rebuilt study of their ranch house months later, Eliza finalized paperwork establishing the territory's first integrated school. Augustus watched her with undisguised admiration, no longer hiding his feelings. I never expected to find peace here, she said without looking up. Is that what you've found? He asked. Eliza met his gaze, her expression resolute. Not peace. Power. The kind Thomas wanted but couldn't wield. She took his hand, but her grip was firm, not gentle. Remember, I survived when no one thought I could. Don't ever make me prove it again. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It helps motivate me write each story. See you tomorrow.